We are on video number 11, the read and commentary on the origin of the world. In our last video, we read from the Blessed Innocent Spirit and came to understand that among human race are those that are known as the kingless race. The kingless race of people, or human beings, walking among us, are those are called Christinos or Christinas of the world. They are beings that come here to assist humanity toward their ascension, and ultimately, so ascension essentially means being able to be enlightened or receive or seated with knowledge, essentially to conceive of that knowledge, understand that knowledge, grasp that knowledge, if you will, so that they take on that knowledge, becoming that knowledge, that gnosis, if you will, that wisdom, the Christ, the Sophia, and thereby leave the realm known as the Kenoma and ascend into, meaning into the 8th and 9th realm, out of the 7 heavens that we're currently under. Those that are transcending are those kingless beings or human beings. They have come here to willingly sacrifice of their nature to suffer among humanity, thereby going to the cross, if you will, in whatever way you want to understand that, whether it be literally or symbolically, to take on suffering as a type of Buddha, Bodhisattva, or a Christ figure, in order that they may assist humanity's ascension. Now, those beings transcend, meaning that they rise above not only the realm we live in, known as the Kenoma, which is the realm of the Hylics and the Psychics, which are the soul-oriented beings, but also even the Pneumatics, which are the spiritual beings. They transcend into the realm known as the inner sanctum of the kingdom of God, which is the realm known as the fullness of the pleroma. This is also called the kingless realm. Those beings are unique, and you will know if you have been called on a mission to rise to the occasion in a big way. It isn't something that will be obscure. It will be very well known. It'll be on the level of a Christ, a Gandhi, on the level of a Mother Teresa, if you will, a type of saint. The vast majority of us will never transcend to that level. The vast majority of us, 99.9% of us, is destined to ascend out of the realm known as the Kenoma and go into the Holy Souls realm. Most of us are not among the kingless. Most of us look to a leader, a guide, if you will, and this will continue to be the case throughout existence for the vast majority of humanity. This is the nature of the way things are constructed. But you mustn't think of this in a hierarchical way. You must think of this as unfolding of our natural selves in what we're going to understand as being our rightful place, that is being revealed, what's called our nature. We're going to understand that when we come to the close of this incredibly enigmatic and revealing book. But let's pick up where we left off in our last video when we talked about the 4 races of being. The 4th race is kingless and perfect. The other 3 races, of course, we talked about already. The flesh-oriented, which is the Hylic. Those are the beings that never really understand or conceive of anything beyond this realm, meaning the realm of the flesh-oriented or material realm. They don't take on that knowledge. They don't appreciate it, nor do they accept it in faith. These are those that are typically very materialistic in what they pursue. And they typically only understand the world from the standpoint of what is empirical or observable through sense orientation. These also include those who consider themselves as religious as well. Religion really isn't what we're talking about here when we talk about the Hylics. We're talking about the Hylics referring to individuals who typically are driven by materialism. They're driven by needing man-made laws, whether it be religious in nature or it be governmental in nature. They look for or toward authoritative figures. They tend to function in a very simplistic manner where they don't consider or listen to much more than your basic needs. On what's called the Maslow hierarchy of needs, they typically are looking for security and pleasure, trying to avoid pain and suffering. But often they find it difficult to escape these things. Pain and suffering often follows them. They don't typically have self-actualization, so forth and so on. These are the Hylics. And whether you're religious or not, whether you believe in God or not, has nothing to do with being a Hylic. Hylic has to do with how you conceive of the world, and what your drive is, what is driving you, what moves you. Is it materialism? Is it self-satisfaction, looking toward self-absorption and only looking at what other people think of you, whether it be a president, a pastor, a preacher, your parents, your friends? So peer pressure, you become sort of a plastic person. We're just a pawn that's being moved around. That's a Heilig. Another way of saying it is a husk. We make a lot of zombie movies around these type of people. They're the masses. Then the second type of individual is more driven in a more conscious way, more self-aware, is not so shaped by opinion of others. These are the individuals that have some sense orientation to their inside world. They have some cognition, some capacity to understand their true natures, and more likely to follow that. They just don't go with the masses. They are more independent, more autonomous. And even these beings are not necessarily having to believe in God or not, but often they will consider deeper matters, and they are more moved by what's going on in their internal selves. These are the psychic individuals, tend to be more capable of understanding a individual self and defining that individual self, going after that individual self. In other words, they understand the God within. They may not necessarily say that or so that's driving them is called God within or the Christ within. They don't necessarily have to do that or recognize that. But what they recognize is something greater than the material world that humans live in. They recognize the human to be more than simply a flesh body. They believe in something higher that is driving humanity. They may call it an intelligence, they may call it design, they may call it a soul, whatever they call it. This is those individuals, the psychic individuals. Then we have the nomadic individuals. Nomadic individuals are those who not only understand that they are more than their physical bodies, but they understand that this realm is only one realm, that there is a higher realm. This realm is merely a stage, if you will, much like in the Matrix. They recognize that their original orientation is beyond this current realm they live in. These are the nomadics, and they have a longing within them to leave this realm. Now, that doesn't mean they're suicidal. There may be moments they may feel suicidal, but they aren't driven to take their own lives. They understand the preciousness of life. They understand that life requires of them to rise up to the occasion, not to be lowering themselves to the point of taking their own life, but rather to cherish that life as precious and unique, so precious and unique that even this realm doesn't deserve it. But they understand that they have within them a mission that must be accomplished, that is larger than this realm. They've been seated here for a purpose. These are the nomadics. They understand the world that they are living in is in some way artificial to them, and that they will ascend this realm. They understand that. They may not necessarily believe in a God. You see, this understanding of a God is merely the messenger. It's the vehicle. The message is there is something within humanity that is larger than everything that humanity is experiencing. And some cognition within humanity understands this. These are the pneumatics. A good example of that might be some of the founding fathers of the United States and the U.S. Constitution. They often call themselves deists, meaning they understand some type of godlike force or energy or presence that brought out the more dignified and noble aspects of humanity, that rise above the crude nature or aspects of nature itself. The founding fathers went above and beyond even John Locke, who believed that the ultimate law was the natural law, what he called the natural law. But the founding fathers believed in what they called the constitution of humanity, meaning that we all have a rightful dignity and place of equality and respect that is due to us, that it goes beyond the crudeness of other humans and even nature itself. So this is the way pneumatics understand the universe and the way things are. And they understand that humanity is destined to rise above the crudeness of things. Whether you want to look at that as the kanoma, or you want to look at it as multiplicity of multiple dimensions of reality, if you're more scientifically minded. But something within you tells you that this realm that we are living in is not all there is. In fact, within, I think it's Plato, he would consider it to be the forms and the formless. The perfect formless idea versus the form. And we are currently in what's called the formation or the forms, which is a mock-up of the idea perfection. or the perfect human, and what Gnostics call the fourth race of the kingless and perfect human. Now I'm bringing this all forth because this is the closure of this book, and this is ultimately what I believe is the message. And when we talk about the kingless being, we are rising even above the pneumatic. They not only understand this truth, but they have been able to sacrifice themselves to this truth. They have such great faith. They are at peace with this truth. And they're willing to go to the cross for this truth, such as Christ or Gandhi did, or John F. Kennedy did, or whatnot. Now, they may not necessarily always be 100% cognizant that they are Christina, but their actions will leave behind a blueprint or a footprint that will move humanity in a most transcendental way of ascending humanity, bringing them to a higher level of cognition and benefaction. So this is the kingless beings. Again, you may not necessarily know that you are that being, but when you are going to Calvary, or the pathway to Calvary, to the cross, and when your life is taken, it will be undeniable to those left behind that you were a type of God or saint. You will leave a blueprint that will be undeniable, that will undeniably change humanity. Now, what you must understand is you cannot make this happen. This will only be within you, a will that's been seeded in you by God himself. So you cannot force this or try to make yourself into this kind of kingless being. Because when you try to do that, you will create a martyr syndrome within yourself, which will cause all kinds of psychological damage, not only to you, but to others around you. You must allow yourself to unfold naturally. And wherever that takes you, you will know it by what sets you free and what brings forth life and health and well-being, and not only yourself but others. Follow that path. And then when it takes you to your heart's desire, or where Christ calls your treasure, then you'll know it, and it will just unfold naturally. When you have to force things against other people, when you have to force it, then it's a sign that it's not healthy and it's not the path you should be taking. It should be an effortless outcome. But it doesn't mean that outcome is not filled with struggles or obstacles. Meaning, in other words, your own personal struggles and your own obstacles. Meaning people forcing you or pushing against you, not you pushing against others. For example, Martin Luther King was a good example of that. His words were like butter. They were effortless. He didn't force anything. He didn't push anyone. He didn't kill anyone. He didn't use armies. Neither did Gandhi. Neither did Christ. When you are able to do that, then you are a kingless being. But again, you can't make yourself into that. Just live out your truth and it will unfold naturally. Nonetheless, understand that these are the smaller percentage of us. It's enough for us to strive to be psychic beings, to go into the realm of the souls, the holy souls, the eighth realm. That in and of itself is an enormous achievement, given that the seven rulers and their powers have over this domain. Just being able to ascend beyond this realm is an incredible accomplishment, much less taking on a pneumatic being, which is even higher. Then you're at the level of a Sethian being, or Jesus Christ, or a Zoe Sophia. That in and of itself is astounding. But ultimately, we understand from Gnostic texts, everybody will ascend this realm, called the seven realms, or the seven heavens, which is known as the Kanoma, and enter into the Holy Souls realm outside of the kingdom known as the kingless realm, which is the Holy Souls realm. That's where the vast majority of us will eventually ascend to. Now, we understood that humanity is like a phoenix. We at one point lived as soul beings in what some might call Atlantis. In Gnosticism and Christian religion, less the Judean religions, we call it Eden. Buddhism, they call it Nirvana, so forth and so on, you see. But at some point, humanity identified and lived in that realm, and we lived for, on average, 1,000 years. Because we attained that degree of election. We understood, we had that type of conception and ability to hold gnosis, that we lived in that state where we could live on average 1,000 years. We were soul-oriented beings, not flesh-oriented beings. Flesh-oriented beings, you will know them by their need to consume and their desire for lust of the material things and the flesh things. They're constantly on a march towards needing for security, image, reputation, pleasure, lust of the things of the flesh, basically. And by attaching to that outcome, then they essentially are the result of their actions, which is consuming. So they end up consuming their very souls and their spirits. And they live no more than, now today, 70, 80 years on average. But we lived in that realm prior, and we were cast down to this realm in what's called the Garden of Gon, or Gaia, which is earth. and we are now trapped in this layer because we have not transfigured or transformed to be able to go beyond. We're not translucent enough to not rely on the basic elements in this realm. Our mind has gone into darkness and dormancy. Whether this was done purposely by the powers that be ultimately doesn't matter, because the spirit rises above anybody's capacity to do anything, whether it be a demon, an angel. You see, your will is set forth, whether it be a government. So all these mind control things that people fear, or the beast, those are inconsequential, because God is capable of putting within you the ability to overcome all of those through your will that is within you, what's called Gnosis, the spirit within. Now that may be in dormancy, it may be awake and aware, but it will always overcome. That's what we must understand. That's the faith in God. If you have this faith in what science can do against you or destroy you or your spirit or your soul, then you're living in fear and you're not at peace as Christ asked you to be. And then you put your faith in science, albeit through cynicism. Now, prior to even the Garden of Paradise, Eden or Nirvana, humanity lived in the pleroma. We lived in the Holy Souls realm and in the pleroma, and we were perfect humans before we were cast down, before Sophia went toward her longing or desire to experience God. And so through humanity, she experiences God, what it's like to be God. And so we are gods on training wheels here in this realm. And so like the phoenix, we've been cast down and we consume ourselves much in the way the fire consumes the phoenix, and then we start out again much like the worm, and then we rise up. And then we always have had psychic self that understands the attachment to the understanding of the serpent. In all races and cultures and civilizations throughout time, the serpent has been risen up as a symbol of wisdom, as something that we celebrate, a paradox of both a blessing/curse. Because we dealt with a race of beings known as the seraphim, which are also known as serpents, and they have intermingled with us, and we have a destiny with them. We have a history with these beings. Now, we're going to pick up from here, but before we continue reading the rest of this incredible book, there is one word that I want to share with you that is very important to understand. This book's going to close on this word in the last couple of sentences, so it's important you understand this word. And that word is conceive or conception. And we understand Mary was able to conceive of the Christ. So she was able to grasp this understanding of the Christ, you see. And through her body, which is the vessel known as Sophia, she was able to not only conceive of, but to actually give conception of the Christ. And that ultimately is the closure or consummation or summary of this entire book, because that's where it's leading you, because you too must conceive of the Christ. But in order for you to conceive of the Christ, you must understand that word, conceive or conception. So let's go and take a look at this word called conceive and its etymology. So conceive in, take seed into the womb, become pregnant. Now remember that within you is the seed that God planted. And what's the purpose of a seed? Well, it is to give birth. In our last book that I read on the channel, it was called Corpus Hermeticum to Asclepius. It closed on the idea that a man that is childless is wretched, but a man that brings forth a child is blessed. Now, if you don't have spiritual understanding, you'll think that that writer is telling you that you need to go and get married and have actual physical children. That's not what he's saying at all. Hermes isn't talking about that. And if you understand the rest of that book, you'll see that he's not talking about that at all. Now, the person that interpreted that book, unfortunately, had a introduction where he speculated that maybe was what Hermes was referring to, but that's not what he's referring to. He's talking about a child. He's talking about a conception, talking about a seed in you and you bringing that forth through the womb, which is, in this case, the vessel of your creation, which is through wisdom. And you bring that forth, and this is what the woman is named after, the womb. Let's see, W-O-M-B, W-O-M-E-N. The womb of the man is the woman. And so this is the vessel of your creation. And the child represents your creation, your conception. And that is what it means to conceive. When you are pregnant with that process, understand the way it works. 9 months represents something. It's the whole spiritual number. And then at the end of the 9 months, you give birth. And this is what Christ means to be born again. To be born again means that you are not a product of your society. You're not bringing forth children of what society expects you to bring forth, what I call demon children. But you bring forth spiritual children that are truly of your nature, whatever your pathway is, your mission is, what moves you, what brings you to peace, that is what you must follow and bring forth conception of. But in order for you to conceive that, you must understand what does it mean, that word conceive. Now, understand C-O-N means with in Latin, and C-E-I-V-E means to take in, grasp, take hold of it, grab it. That's where we get the word receive. Receive means taking something and grabbing it, right? You receive it, you take it, you grab it. But you're receiving it means that you're returning back to something that you've seeded. So something seeded that possibility. Whether you asked for it or you set forth a domino effect that lead to you taking or grasping that something, that means receiving it. So just by seeding it, you already received it. And that's why you're redoing it. You're taking it, receiving it. You're taking it back. Something you already had. So this is what we understand. Conceptus, to take in and hold, become pregnant. From con, here probably an intensive prefix, combining form of capere, to take, to grasp, meaning take into the mind, form a correct notion of, form as a general notion in the mind. So it's very important, this thing called gnosis. This is having a very correct notion of who you really are and what is truly your path, what is truly your mission. To take effectively, to take to oneself, take in and hold. That is to conceive. So you must take that in, that essence of who you really, really are. And you're going to know this by what moves you, what inspires you, and what brings you to rest. That is the very essence of life itself. That's the practice of the breathing in, breathing out. What brings you to rest is the expiration. What brings you to inspiration is the breathing in of the spirit, right? You're breathing in, you're taking it in. That's the conceiving. And then when you're breathing out, that's the repose. And you go to rest and you breathe out. You ever hear people who are in stress and you say, take a deep breath. Well, they take a deep breath and then they blow it out and then they're at peace for a moment. So that's the repose. So the inspiration means to actually literally take the spirit in, breathe it in, take it in, be seated by the Christ. So in order for you to do that, your mind must be open, because this is where the seeding occurs. It doesn't occur in your belly or in your physical flesh body. It occurs in your mind. This is what is meant by marrying the Christ, so that you can go to the holy chambers that are only set aside for you, your rightful place that you have as a son and daughter of God stored away for you. So you marry the Christ, and then you go to the wedding or the bed chambers, and you have a type of intercourse with the Christ. And then you conceive, meaning you take in the Spirit. You are inspired by the Christ, and then you become pregnant, and then you give birth. And then when you give birth, you are born again. You're giving birth to yourself. That is the child referred to in to Asclepius Corpus Hermeticum. Not a flesh child, but the child of your creation. You see, that is what God has brought you here to do. God hasn't brought you here to decide whether or not you want to go to hell or play a harp forever in heaven, and for you to feel pitiful and shameful walking around like a broken human who lost its wings because you feel so guilty and ashamed for just existing, because you're such a wretched human for all your sins and plucking an apple from a tree, your great-great-great-grandparent who you didn't even know. You see, those are lies spun from those who want to control you. You see? So now, do we understand this word conceive? Let's complete the rest of this book, and it's going to flow quite quickly because it's very clear to us, I think, what it's going to share with us. So we're picking up in the section called Jesus the Logos. Now the Word, who is more exalted than anyone, was sent for this work only, to announce what is unknown. And the Word is Christ, Jesus made flesh, and the unknown is what's in you. And the goal here is to get to know that thing, the unknown. He said there is nothing hidden that will not appear, and what was unknown will be known. You see, you may not know what that thing is yet, and maybe you do. You've been avoiding it because of fear, because of ridicule, because of lack of faith and belief in self. But understand that if it's in you, and you have faith in it, and you follow it, and you do the work, see, it requires work, just as the Christ, that's the pathway. It's not just belief. But you must have the four elements. You must have the gnosis, which is the air element of knowledge. You must have the emotional, which is the water. You must have the belief. You must do the work, which is the earth. And the inspiration is the fire. You see, you must have the four elements. There isn't just one universal law, the law of attraction, and it's all done. You see, you just sit there in your room and you wait for someone to bring you your unknown self. You have a work to do, and it must be done. and the four elements must be involved. You cannot leave one of them out. And so he said, there is nothing hidden that will not appear, and that was unknown will be known. Now these were sent so they might reveal what is hidden and expose the seven authorities of chaos and their impiety. So these seven rulers represent all the obstacles standing in the way of revealing, pushing aside the veil, so that you may know your true self, and not only know it, but become known, blossom forth, show the beauty of your plumage. Those seven rulers are there to prevent you from having access to that truth, the revelation. They were condemned to be killed. So these people, those that really set forth, the flesh body must die. The flesh body is the person that the universe, the people around you, the authorities, your peers, your parents say who you are. That's your flesh body. In order for your true self to come forth, that previous person that you knew must die on the cross. It must be killed. You must slay it for you to be liberated and be born again. So when all the perfect ones appeared in the fashioned bodies of the rulers and revealed incomparable truth, they put to shame every wisdom of the gods, and their fate was discovered to be condemnable. Their power dried up, their dominion was destroyed, and their forethought and their glory became empty. When you finally reveal your truth and your dignity, everyone that struggled against you to stand in your way, they will become naught, and they will shame themselves. You're not shaming them. They will condemn themselves, because they will have to live with the truth that they are an artificial. They are a falsehood. They are not true. They are a lie. They are living a lie. They're enabling a lie. They will have to face that at some point, and they're condemned in so long as they continue down that path. And you no longer become an enabler to them. You detach from them. And that's what it means to unplug from the matrix. And that's the way it works. It's not through wars. It's not through going and listening to conspiracy channels and figuring out who is the authorities and who's ruling the world. Is it George Soros or the Illuminati? You see, all those things are good to know, to be aware of, but they're not the pathway to liberation. And that is not what it means to unplug from the matrix. Living in fear and terror is the matrix. You see? So next, the consummation of the age in the apocalypse. Before the consummation of the age, the whole place will be shaken by great thunder. This is how it works. When you go and you transform yourself, you will have obstacles and people against you, authority figures. It's called rulers are really the authority figures in your life. They're standing in your way, telling you, no, you're supposed to be like this. It's because of religion. They are lined up to legions. They are their allegiance. You see, religion and allegiance stem from the same word. So they have their allegiance to some other ruler above them, because they're giving away their entire image to someone else's opinion. Then the rulers will lament, crying out on account of their death, because they would die. Because in a way, you have told them, your opinion is not important to me. And that will bruise them. It will bruise their ego. And they will feel like they've died. They will feel as though you've taken away a little bit of their life, because they relied on you like a parasite for some of your energy, and you're unplugging from them. And so they experience a type of lamentation and suffering. And they will wail, and they will use shame and guilt and anger, and they will try to shame you through crying and feeling sorry. Don't you feel sorry for me? Then the rulers will lament, crying out on account of their death. The angels will mourn for their human beings. See, the ones they lose, the ones that become human beings, not just artificial apparatuses like in the Matrix that they're hooked into, that you see in the movie Matrix, in these vats of human secretion. And their people will mourn and cry out on account of their death. Then the age will begin and they will be disturbed, meaning they will be disturbed because they will understand it's the beginning of the end for them. They know that you are unplugging, and they're going to be desperate. Their kings will be drunk from the flaming sword and will make war against one another. So the earth will be drunk from the blood that is poured out. In other words, if they can't have you, then nobody can. And they will go on a campaign of destruction. Because if they can't have joy, in other words, their definition of vicariously living through you as a parasite, hooked into you, draining you of your energy, then no one can experience the peace that you share. So they will go on a rampage and make war. And in the process, they will destroy everything in their path, so that the earth will be drunk from the blood that is poured out, and the seas will be troubled by that war. Then the sun will darken, and the moon will lose its light. The stars of the heaven will disregard their course, and great thunder will come out of great power that is above all the powers of chaos, the place where the firmament of the woman is situated. And where is this firmament of the woman is situated? The beginning of wisdom. What you have done, you have not only birthed your new self, but you have seated in them wisdom. They may not know it at that time, but you have done the work. You have become a fisher of men. You have become a Christ. Because in finding yourself, you have become an example unto the world to follow, and you will become light. And that will seed in them, unknown to them, the seed of Christ. And it will be the beginning of the end for them, because their world will go topsy-turvy. They will have no choice but to be able to understand there's a different way of seeing the world. They can try to ignore it, but the work has been done. When she has created the first work, she will take off her wise flame of afterthought and will put on irrational wrath. And these people that you've unplugged from, it will be a day of wrath for them, because the wisdom flame has been used against them as an afterthought. And so they had no forethought, so they must suffer the wrath of afterthought. Then she will drive out the gods of chaos whom she had created together, chief creator. She will cast them down to the abyss. They will be wiped out by their own injustice. You see, you're not wiping them out. You are taking back what is rightfully yours. And they will lose that energy from you, the energy that they relied on to survive. And then they will die a slow death from their own injustice, and they will wipe themselves out. Now, we're talking about their flesh body. They will only be able to survive when they recognize that they are not their flesh body, but they are their spiritual body. The seed that has been placed in them, that relies on no one's opinion, that's the spirit within them. That's the gnosis, the moment of waking up to that realization. Then they will understand eternity and eternal life, and they will have access to the tree of knowledge of good and evil, what is good for them and what is not good for them. But until that day, they are still under the rulers. They're still in darkness. You see, that's the way we do it. That's how you become fishermen, finding yourself first and walking that path and sharing that truth. And then everyone else becomes inspired by you. They see your light, and they said, I want some of that. They will be wiped out by their own injustice, for they will become like the mountains that blaze out of fire, and they will consume one another until they are destroyed by their chief creator. You see, you don't need to make war against these people. You don't need to go and slay them, because when you unplug from them, they will destroy themselves. Because they'll start to turn on each other, trying to take their plugs and plugging it into each other, you see, and trying to get the energy from each other, and they'll drain each other out eventually. That's the way it always works. Evil always destroys itself from within. When he destroys them, he would turn against himself and destroy himself until he ceases to be. And let's talk about the chief ruler here, the one who started it all, who said that I'm a god and there's no other god but me. So he wanted it all to himself, and he wanted to rule over everyone, calling himself Lord God. And their heavens will fall upon one another, and their powers will burn. Their realms will also be overthrown. You see, this is illustrative because it's wanting to drive this home to you, how much of a wrecking ball it will be for them when you finally liberate yourselves from their opinions and you follow your path. It will be like a wrecking ball. Likewise, his stars in their sphere will fall down to the earth, and the earth will not be able to support them. They will fall down to the abyss, and the abyss will be overthrown. You see, it will be a day of reckoning for them. It will be apocalypse. That's how it works. That's the way it's set up, you see. This is the ordination. This is the design of God himself. This is how it works. That's your work. That's why you're sent here. You see, as a pneumatic, soul-oriented being, a Gnostic, as a kingless one, perhaps. The last section here, the light is saved and Gnostics return home. The light will cover the darkness and obliterate it. It will become like something that never existed. In other words, people will laugh at it, because when we finally have that understanding of what our true nature is, and that we all allow each other to just be what God intended us to be from the beginning, stop judging each other and putting in quote-unquote man-made spiritual laws to try to govern and rule over each other, then we will all laugh at it, much in the way an adult laughs at a child doing something foolish. And the source of the darkness will be dissolved. The deficiency will be plucked out at its root and thrown down to darkness. And the light will withdraw up to its root, and the glory of the unconceived will appear. You see, the unconceived. What was not conceived, hidden, the veil, will be removed. And it will be, as Christ said, what was unknown will become known. And it will fill all the eternal realms. You see, that light will pour out. When the prophetic utterances and the writings of those who are rulers are revealed and are fulfilled by those who are called perfect. See, you're already perfect. When you understand that, you follow that truth, then the rulers get exposed because you understand they've been lying to you. There's nothing shameful about you. You have nothing to be guilty of. God made you just the way you are, loves you exactly the way you are, has created you exactly the way you're intended to be. The only reason we go off and we do things that are hurtful to self and other is we don't realize this truth. When we finally realize this truth, when we follow it, the world will be liberated. and the rulers will stand in the public places in shame from exposure of lies. Those who were not perfected in the unconceived Father will receive their glories in their realms and the kingdoms of immortals. But you see, even the ones that do not understand Gnosis or receive Gnosis, when the rulers get exposed, even those people will be liberated, you see, because we will have done the work for them, and they will realize in that moment. Now, they will be unconceived at that point, and they will have to do the walk, but they'll be able to do it in the kingdom of the immortals, in the realms known as the Holy Soul's realm. They'll be able to understand at that point, and they'll be able to start to unfold their natural selves for the first time. So not everybody, even in this realm, has to be conceived. Everybody is encouraged by Christ to be conceived and born again so that they may be liberated and know truth and know freedom and know their true selves and shine that light forth rather than putting a cloth over the candle. But even that is not ultimately a problem for God. So even if we all get brain-wired into some kind of matrix or 5G system or mind control, none of that matters, you see, because not all of us will take on that, because among us walk those that have Gnosis, you see. So you need not fear. And we will not only redeem ourselves, but when the rulers get revealed, even those that are unconceived will also taste of the realm of the immortal or the Holy Soul's realm. But they will not enter the kingless realm, however. If you are going to take on this mission of assisting those that are unable to unplug or be unconceived, then perhaps you too will be among those who will take on the prize of the kingless realm. But again, don't force it. Don't try to make yourself something that you're not. Don't become a martyr. Being the king is not about being a martyr. It's about being what is naturally you, and you may or may not be that. And there's no guilt or shame in that. You are exactly what you're intended to be from the beginning. And finally, for it is necessary that everyone enter the place from which he has come. Each one, by his deeds in his gnosis, will reveal his nature. You see, you don't need to fret. Christ said himself, when he first sees you, be at peace. He's saying that because he knows that what God set forth from the beginning, it will be done. And the work that he wants to do is good. There is only good in God. Everything he created, he called good. Everything he created, he called good. In the 7 days that he created, when he finished each day, he said he called it good. It was the Lord God that came along and called it good and evil. It's the Lord God who created confusion, who was the first murderer, who invented this concept called evil and division, the devil, the adversary, Satan. You see, God, the true Father, the monad, the mother father, is only good and only has good intentions from the beginning and only creates that which is good and perfect. His outcome will be revealed as true and absolute and full, also known as the pleroma. All right, with that, hopefully you've taken something of value from this. You'll be able to take on this knowledge and find your path. Thank you for listening. We'll talk again soon.